I mean the stunning fire that consumed one of the finest cathedrals in the world, the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris yesterday. Now, the Eiffel Tower is a symbol of modern France, though it's almost 150 years old. You see it, you immediately think Paris. It's the world's most photographed object, they say. The Arc de Triomphe, whose construction started more than 200 years ago, is a stunning edifice too, a monument to France's past greatness militarily. That's what it means, the military triumphs of the country. Did you know someone once flew an airplane through it? Notre Dame Cathedral, though, is the foundation for all of it, for all of Paris, for all of France. It is the French pillar of Western civilization. The history of the West is the history of Christianity. And while the Vatican in Rome is the house of the Catholic faith, as was Constantinople and the mighty Hagia Sophia Church before it was conquered by Islam and turned into a mighty mosque, Notre Dame must surely rank as one of the most important cathedrals, the outpost of Christianity in France and beyond. 1,000 years, nearly, the foundation stone was laid by the Pope in the year 1163. It took more than 100 years to finish building it. 4 generations of workers. It's massive. It's a staggering feat of architecture and art. It has many little chapels and nooks, treasure troves, hidden passages, hidden staircases. The narrow path up to the top leads to a stunning view of Paris down below. It's amazing today. It's inconceivable how impressive it must have been during the Middle Ages. It truly would have been a wonder of the world. In fact, I think it still is. It became the setting for the Victor Hugo novel, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which has been turned into so many plays and movies since, including a Disney version, of course. It has been renovated, the church, and rebuilt countless times since its original construction. The enormous spire that fell so tragically yesterday was only several hundred years old. The mighty oak roof was original, though. Those trees would have already been 300 or 400 years old when they were harvested to build the mighty roof, an estimated 12,000 trees, a whole forest. It took a century to build this thing. That roof was from trees that grew 1,000 years ago. Here's what Bernard-Henri Lévy, the French author, said of the place. Notre Dame de Paris is really one of the beating hearts of the French civilization. How can you rebuild 8 or 9 centuries of history? How can you rebuild the tears, the whispers, and the memories of a whole country and of the whole civilization? I think they will rebuild. So far, several French billionaires have stepped forward with pledges of hundreds of millions of dollars, and thankfully, the stone walls of the church seem to be sturdy, and other parts of the church down below, the main blaze was on the oak roof. I don't know if you remember, I didn't remember till I was reminded of it, about 25 years ago, Windsor Castle burnt. And it looked as shocking as the Notre Dame fire, almost. But within a couple of years, it was refurbished and rebuilt with craftsmen, and the horror, and I guess it gave way to redemption, gave Brits a new connection to the royals to rebuild it. They opened the doors to it, and that was just history and the monarch. This is history and monarchy and faith and civilization itself, and far older. This is everything for France. There were relics in that church that date back to Jesus himself. The crown of thorns, brought to France nearly 1,000 years ago, is believed to be the preserved crown of thorns that Jesus himself wore. The cathedral is an important symbol, but there was no one killed yesterday, thankfully. One firefighter was injured. But still, it had the gutting, shocking feeling of a sort of 9/11, a symbol of the Christian West itself being burnt, which is why it was no surprise to those of us who follow such things that the Arabic language chat by French Muslims on news pages and Facebook pages was jubilant. Look at all these comments from a French news Facebook post. All the celebration, all the happy faces, the emojis, the jubilation at the burning of a mighty Christian church. They know there's a meaning here more than just bricks and stones. Just 2 months ago, by the way, another mighty French church, Saint Sulpice, was burnt too. Police say that was deliberately set, arson. It's true that fires can happen by accident in old buildings, especially. Most fires are accidental. Some are arson of the mere criminal variety, but it is also a tool of terrorism. In 2016, there was an ISIS plot to blow up the Notre Dame Cathedral. Now, that was foiled In fact, a terrorist from that plot was sentenced just a few weeks ago. Was it terrorism? Immediate talking points on French TV said that this was a construction accident, not arson, certainly not terrorism. But how could that possibly be determined before the fire was even put out? How could that be immediately known? Contrary reports say there was, in fact, no construction at that time. It'll take some days or weeks for the facts to come out. If it's like the mass shooting in Las Vegas, it'll take years, if ever. But the immediate reflex of politicians to rule out arson or Muslim terrorism has become sort of like a reverse boy crying wolf. You know that parable? The boy falsely cried wolf so often that soon no one believed him, and one day a wolf did truly come. Here we have the reverse. The media and politicians reflexively say, nothing to see here, no wolf here, there is no wolf here, before they even know when there so evidently sometimes is a wolf, when someone calls out Allah Akbar, when an ISIS flag is found, when it's so manifest. We have the reverse of the boy who cries wolf. We have someone saying, no wolf, there's no wolf, but too often there is a wolf, and so we no longer trust those who we need to trust. That's an excerpt from the Ezra Levant show. Every day I do a video monologue and then I interview an interesting guest, and then I end by reading my hate mail. But you've got to subscribe to it, which you can do at therebel.media/shows.